You are not a Jedi yet.
All right, gents, we're going to have some fun in today's video. I'm doing a style analysis. Sith versus Jedi style. You ready? Let's get into it. All right, Jen, so before I get into this style analysis, I want to introduce you to the paid sponsor of today's video, Supreme Leader Snoke. He had 3 important messages he wanted me to get across. First off, if you know the whereabouts of Luke Skywalker, go to your local First Order office and report this information. 2, while you're at your local First Order office, you might as well volunteer for many of the slave positions we have building the new Star Killer base. We plan on enslaving the entire universe, so you might as well take your pick of which position you want now. Finally, there is somebody out there that's been spreading this rumor that Jar Jar Binks and Supreme Leader Snoke are the same person. This is not the case, and when we find this person, we're going to torture them with Force lightning. All right, gents, I'm putting a Force-sensitive link down in the description. When you click on it, you can expect a First Order representative or a possible Death Trooper to visit you within 24 hours. All right, gents, let's jump into the style analysis. And the first thing that you have to understand is the philosophical differences between the Jedi and between the Sith. Understand that these two orders are very different in what they believe, what they stand for, and this has a huge effect on everything they do, the way that they want to represent themselves physically to the world. So the Jedi, this is going to be removed from materialism, has a very strong Buddhist influence, and what we see here is that simply they want to keep things simple. They're not looking to adorn themselves with jewelry. They don't go for anything flashy. It is simply functional clothing that does its job. Another influence historically, if you look back from 14th to 18th century Japan, huge influence on the clothing. In fact, they say the 1956 film, The Seven Samurai, had a huge impact on George Lucas and the clothing that he chose for and the looks and the garb that he went with. Now let's look at the specific clothing that a typical Jedi would wear. We've got an undertunic, we've got a tunic, we've got the tabard, we've got an obi, we've got pants, we've got boots, and over all of that, we've got a robe. In general, we would see Jedi lean towards lighter color earth tones, something that's simply going to blend into the background, something, again, not going to grab too much attention. We would see beige, we would see tan, we would see variations of brown, from light brown to dark brown, especially the dark brown in on the accents, also used on the robe. Very functional if you think about it for stain resistance and things like that. Now, we would occasionally see white, especially in the under tunic and the tunic area, but black. Black was something that was reserved really for accents. You didn't see too many Jedi wearing a whole lot of black. The only exception I really saw too much was Anakin Skywalker, and we all know what happened to that guy. Now, one thing you typically wouldn't see with Jedis is armor. Now, I know there were exceptions during the new Sith, the old Sith, and the Clone Wars in which Jedi would actually wear armor. But for the most part, Jedi in armor, it just didn't really make sense because these were guys which were trying to be mediators. They were trying to stop violence. They were trying to, in a sense, send the message, we are here as peacekeepers. So wearing armor, wearing something that would have really jagged edges, all of a sudden would send that message that you're coming off as aggressive. And so we don't see them usually wearing this type of stuff. Now, I started this off by saying this was typical Jedi attire, but understand if battle conditions call for it, they're going to wear whatever works for that environment. So we look at Kit Fisto at the Battle of Mon Calamari. What's this guy wearing? He's wearing a pair of trunks. He's down there in the water making things happen. Also, advanced Jedi and some Padawans would choose to wear clothing that represented their home, where they came from. So we would look at someone like Ahsoka Tano. What did she choose to wear? Clothing that was actually typical of where she was from.
Hey, stop right there.
Impressive.
All right, enough with the boring Jedi. Let's talk about Sith style. So if you know anything about the Sith, you may know they started off as fallen Jedi who took over a species of people called Sith who hailed from the Stygian caldera. But what happened is the Sith did affect these fallen Jedi, and they got a taste for luxury, for basically beautiful things, for adorning themselves. And so we're going to find that the Sith in general are not afraid, and they become very individualized. They want to be recognized when they go out there. They want people to identify who they are. So everything we're going to see with the Sith is much more grabbing attention, and the colors and the symbolism here is very strong. So first off, what do we notice? We see a lot of similarities with the Jedi. We're going to have the under tunic. We're going to have the tunic. We're going to have the robes. We're going to have the boots. We're going to have the pants. A lot of the things are the same, except look at the color. Black, black, black. Why do we see black? Because black is a classic color for aggressiveness, for dominance, for strength, for intimidation. Everything the Sith wants to send, it sends in many ways with the color, with the stark contrast that basically this silhouette cuts against any background. So let's get into some fun detail about the Sith clothing. When we look at the leathers, a Jedi is going to use something that really doesn't grab attention. A Sith, like Darth Tyrannus, he's going to actually go with Rancor leather, which you may know is very, very hard to get. Is also going to be incredibly tough. It's going to be something that's going to cost quite a few credits, and it's just going to be something that is going to command attention anywhere he goes. Also, we look at the gloves. Siths wore gloves. When we look at Jedi, they oftentimes exposed their hands, but Sith would wear warrior gloves, and these gloves were going to be very tough, going to also be resistant to blasters and a wide range of other weapons. Next up, let's talk about cloaks. So during the Rule of Two, and this is when you only had a master and an apprentice, and the Sith were trying to keep it on the down low. They didn't want the Jedi knowing what's going on. They were secretly plotting for over 1,000 years. At this point, we saw Darth Sidious wearing a Zed cloth robe. And this is going to be one that doesn't draw attention. It's got a very rough weave, kind of like a waffle weave. And this was something he could wear over and simply not draw attention to himself. Look like he actually doesn't have a lot of money, someone that you wouldn't expect to be plotting to take over the universe. Now, when Darth Vader hit the scene, he wanted to separate himself from Darth Sidious a bit. So he brought in the armor weave cloak. Now, you may be familiar with armor weave, especially if you're of Mandalorian descent, but the armor weave is going to be very expensive, has a nice drape to it. But the key parts about the armor weave are it's going to stop blaster fire, and it can even deflect a lightsaber. Okay, so earlier when I talked about Jedi and armor, I talked about how these two really don't go together. But understand that armor and Sith, they go together like peas and carrots. The Sith love armor because they understand that armor worn, especially with jagged edges, worn maybe as shoulder pads with a chest plate, this is going to intimidate. A Sith, they're going to wear armor on their legs, they're going to have it on their knees, they're going to have it on their boots, they are going to wear armor everywhere. And the more sharp edges, points, thorns, just spikes, they are looking for this because they understand that it's going to send a message, do not mess with me. And when you hurt a Sith, when you cut off his arm, when you make it so that he can't breathe very well, he's going to get a mechanical enhancement and he's going to come off as even more intimidating. So guys, another thing to understand about Sith armor, Sith clothing is oftentimes it's been infused with the Force to help them direct and control their power of the Force. So when they wear this armor, when they wear certain robes, the ones that have been taken and passed down, not really passed down, they probably killed their master, but they got a hold of this armor that has these ancient properties. All of a sudden, it enhances their natural Force ability. All right, so we talked about the clothing differences between Jedi and Sith, but if you're in a dark bar, Mos Eisley, you're going to need more than just their clothing to be able to tell the differences. So let's talk about face, let's talk about eyes, let's talk about skin. So what are we going to notice with the Jedi? They are overall approachable. When I look at their face, one, I can actually see the face. They're very approachable. They're also going to be familiar. We've got a lot of humanoids. We have aliens that are still going to be oftentimes approachable. They've got larger eyes. They're going to smile at you. Kit Fisto, look at that smile. Gotta love that guy. Their skin overall looks like it has life, and their eyes, pretty much you're not going to see anything glowing in their eyes. Because when we go and we look at the Sith, what do we notice when we look at a Sith's eyes? We're going to see a yellow glow. Understand that's because this person is using the dark side of the Force. When you use the dark side of the Force, your eyes start to glow yellow. Also, look at their skin. When you become a Sith Lord and you start to use the dark side of the Force, your skin becomes deathly white. I don't know why this happens, but understand that you are going to want to avoid a tan. Definitely, I think every Sith out there should be looking to get Tiege handling. That could probably solve a lot of problems, but it's not going to be able to do too much for some of the other things we're going to talk about, which is extreme scarring. So it seems like Sith are just a glutton for punishment. These guys love to get burned. They love to get just beat up, thrown into rocks. Just really, they take a beating, but they keep coming back. But we are going to see scars. And like I talked about, if they're wearing a robe, they are going to throw that up. Doesn't matter how hot it is outside. They just think that no one is going to see them going around when they've got that cover up on the rope. No! All right, guys, what'd you think? I had fun putting this video together. Hopefully you caught some of the Easter eggs in this video. I tried to throw a lot out there. I am a huge Star Wars fan. I've loved this stuff since I was a kid. I'm also a big fan of Game of Thrones, Marvel Comics, DC Comics. So if you guys have any ideas of videos that I should be creating, let me know down in the comments. Also, go check out, I'm going to link to some channels down in the description. We're talking Charlie over at Emergency Awesome, Scott over at NerdSync, and a few other channels that I love. And if you are a big fan of fantasy, you're a fan of comics, then you are going to enjoy these channels. That's it, guys. Take care, and may the Force be with you.